G'day viewers. I wanted to make this video because it's the 1 year anniversary of my diagnosis with cancer. So I was diagnosed on the 16th of December 2020 with cancer. So which was I think almost exactly 6 weeks, or very close to 6 weeks, after my father passed away on the 6th of November 2020. So it's been a very tough year on me and my family, in particular my mother, actually, as you can imagine. My father passing, and then 6 weeks later she finds out that her son has actually blood cancer. So I specifically have a form of cancer. It's quite rare. It's called multiple myeloma, and it's a blood cancer, and it lives with the leukemia family. My body just makes too much plasma cells, and as a result of that, it's killing me. So I wanted to just capture my journey to date. It's been 12 months to the day, and it's been what I would describe as a year of absolute hell. So look, let me start off by saying on the 16th of December 2020 I was diagnosed. It actually started off as incredibly severe back pain and rib pain and shoulder pain. Each time I sneezed, it felt like somebody was just ripping all the flesh from my torso, from my upper body. So it was extremely painful. Anyway, I ended up. It was extremely painful, and I had terrible trouble sleeping, and it got to the point where I even tried to sleep like a horse standing up. It was sort of on all fours on bed. It was just it was just absolutely terribly painful. Anyway, so I went to the doctor, and they took blood. And I was diagnosed with cancer. And this was actually the second attempt at the doctor. I first went to one doctor from the same clinic, who basically had missed it completely, and believed it was something else, and not cancer. I then went to another doctor, my usual doctor at the same clinic. He took some blood, sent me for an X-ray, and it was all revealed. The X-ray showed that basically my bottom rib was like a twig, and my blood absolutely revealed that I had late stage cancer. So anyway, that's how it started. So on the 16th, I was admitted to the Box Hill Hospital, and my chemotherapy started that same day. And I was admitted. I had terrible back pain, terrible rib pain, and shoulder pain. And as it turned out, the majority of my shoulder pain, which was actually the majority of the pain at the time I was admitted, was there because of a tear that I actually had in the muscle. I had a really bad tear in my shoulder that was right down to the bone, basically, and that was incredibly painful. So anyway, I was admitted, and they started me on chemotherapy. On my first couple of nights there, my legs went into spasm, as they usually did, actually. My legs would actually go into spasm, and I just assumed it was because of the cycling I was doing, because I was doing previously 300 kilometres a week cycling, and a consequence of that much cycling is that your legs become incredibly tired, and that's what I thought it was. Anyway, I told the doctor that, and they weren't at all impressed. So I had the next day, I had emergency radiotherapy, and the doctor said to me, actually, if it happened that night, doesn't matter if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I needed to contact the nurses, and they'd get someone in at that hour to do emergency radiotherapy, because what was happening was my spine, which was riddled with cancer. I had tumour I had tumours all up and down my spine, were pressing against my nerves and threatening to paralyse me. So I narrowly escaped, at the very least, paralysis, potentially quadriplegia, by that emergency radiotherapy. So I dodged that bullet, and I was very, very lucky, and I consider myself to be extremely fortunate because of that. Anyway, they did that. They did the emergency radiotherapy, and bang, the problem just went away, and I've never experienced it again. I then started my chemotherapy. At the time, I'd started my chemotherapy, which was dexamethasone, a steroid, Velcade, and some other drugs. The steroids were absolutely amazing in that I found myself to lose all emotional control. I would cry or get angry at the smallest thing, and that's a typical side effect of steroids. I was in a very high dose of steroids. Can't remember precisely how much it was. It was quite high, and my chemotherapy is actually quite potent. So the medical strategy was to hit it hard and fast, and to knock it back as much as possible. But the consequences of that, the side effects from the dexamethasone, the steroids, as I said, was emotional incontinence. They certainly made you feel good, and made you eat a whole lot more than you would normally eat. So there was some weight gain associated, substantial weight gain associated with that. The Velcade, my body absolutely did not like the Velcade, and eventually the Velcade was stopped because I was getting some very serious side effects. I was passing out, collapsing. I couldn't even urinate effectively because my blood pressure would just drop, and I'd collapse. So in the fullness of time, the Velcade was actually stopped. So I actually went through 4 cycles of chemotherapy. Each cycle is typically 2 weeks. So you do 2 weeks of chemotherapy, and then I think a week break, then another 2 weeks, and then a week break, and that would go on for 4 cycles. And by the time the Velcade actually manifested as some serious side effects, and they stopped it, my cycles were extended to 4 weeks instead of 2 weeks. So yeah, I had quite a difficult time with the Velcade. My body just did not like it, and in addition to this, my body didn't like it so much that the Velcade actually caused nerve damage, and I now have a condition called peripheral neuropathy. And basically, when it first hit, it was like walking barefoot in the snow for 2 to 3 minutes, and then coming inside and putting your feet into a hot bucket of water. It's quite uncomfortable, quite painful, and that's how it certainly felt to begin with. So they started me on some anti-epileptic drugs called pregabalin. That's the brand name that I take. Quite high dose again, to try and block the nerves, the messages from my feet to my brain. It seems to have reduced it to by about 70%, but it's that remaining 30% that seems to be dragging on, and that remaining 30% makes me feel like I'm walking on golf balls. So to help deal with that, obviously I'm taking the pregabalin that I mentioned before, the anti-epileptic drug, but I'm also taking Targin and tramadol. So they're both very powerful painkillers, narcotics, controlled substances. So yeah, I've been taking those for quite some time, and they themselves do actually have side effects. So everything you take, there is a side effect. I've lost my hair 5 times, so you can see here I'm just absolutely bald, like an egg, like an eagle. Anyway, that's happened 5 times now. So hopefully now that won't happen again. So my hair can actually grow back finally, before being, deleted again. So currently, so I just and so I went through 4 cycles of chemotherapy, and I also had 2 bone marrow transplants. Now the first bone marrow transplant went really, really well. I flew through it, had no issues, nothing. It was a miracle, and the hospital does not see that happen very often at all. But I did. I was very, very fortunate. The second bone marrow transplant, however, was a real nightmare, and I developed a mouth infection, which was thrush. I developed a blood infection, which was called gram negative, and I developed a bowel infection called C. diff colitis. So I had a really rough time on my second transplant. Because of the blood infection, I was violently shaking. It was just absolutely horrific. It's worse than you'd see in movies. It was really horrific, violent shivering. And eventually the doctor came in and said, all right, well, let's give Rick some pethidine. So they gave me some pethidine, and that eventually stopped the shaking. But from then on, they put me on a steady course of antibiotics for both my blood infection, my bowel infection, and actually for my mouth infection, for the thrush as well. So it was absolutely hell the second time round. The first time round, on day 12, I was home. On the second round, on day 14, I was still highly infected at hospital, but it was under control. At one point, at its worst point with the shaking, with the violent shaking, I was at over 40 degrees Celsius with respect to my temperature, and it was quite a scary situation at the time. And the hospital certainly did express to me how serious my situation was. But fortunately, I got through it. So now I'm currently at home. It's the 16th of December. It's, as I said, the 1 year anniversary of my first diagnosis. So I'm currently at home. I do have a PICC line still in, which I'm hoping to get removed on this coming Monday. And a PICC line is basically a pipe or a tube from my left arm, in my case, to the entrance of my heart, which allows medical staff to administer chemotherapy very easily, and antibiotics and other things, without having to stab me 100 times. So it's there really for their benefit and my benefit, and it works really well. And when it's done properly, you don't feel anything. So this is the second PICC line that I've had. I had a PICC line for each bone marrow transplant. Now, something that I haven't actually talked about, and I should, is the stem cell collection process. So that also was not a very pleasant experience at all. And in fact, I hated that actually the most. Of all the things that happened to me in 2021 with respect to my blood cancer. That's what I disliked the most, the collection process, the stem cell collection process. So I had to go through a couple of I had to go through it a couple of times. What actually happened was, when I was first diagnosed, I was told that I would need 1 bone marrow transplant. What actually happened in the background, which I didn't know of, and was explained to me later on when I expressed concern, what actually happened in the background is they took my blood and they sent it to, apparently there's only one hospital, one laboratory in the whole of Victoria that actually performs what's called a cytogenetic analysis. And naturally, as you'd expect, because there's only one laboratory, you effectively get put on a queue, right? So my blood was taken on the 16th of December. It was sent to this lab, and I go to the bottom of the queue, and it took months for me to get to the top, where they would actually do that analysis. And they did a cytogenetic analysis, and it was determined that just because of my genetic constitution, I was at high risk of relapse with just one bone marrow transplant. So it was decided that I needed two. And so when I first started the journey, it was mentioned to me that I needed one bone marrow transplant and not two. And then eventually, when they told me that I needed two, it was a bit spooky. It seemed to sort of come out of the blue. But anyway, it was explained to me why, and the why is what I just told you about. So subsequently, I needed two bone marrow transplants, which meant that I needed a second stem cell collection process, because typically what the hospitals like to do is they like to harvest the stem cells that you need for one or two transplants, and then they'd like one in reserve. So in my case, I've got enough cells, or I had enough cells for three transplants, and I've now used two. So I actually have one in reserve, and that can be held in reserve for decades if required. So I had to go through that process twice, and in that process, there's a period of about a week that you need to self-inject with a drug called GSF, and that's an acronym for I don't know what, but it's called GSF. That's the acronym, and that boosts your stem cell production. And then, if it's still not high enough, they give you another drug, another injection for you to take home and use. And this other injection's worth about $6,000, and I had two of them. And that just shows you the great system that we've got here in Australia. So I had all of my treatment basically at the Box Hill Hospital. However, I had my stem cell collection at the Austin Hospital. So the Box Hill Hospital's got an agreement with the Austin Hospital, and the Austin Hospital collects the stem cells, and they hold them there. And when a patient requires it at Box Hill Hospital, the stem cells are then transported over to Box Hill Hospital and utilised by the patient. So the stem cell collection process was absolutely terrible in my experience, and each collection process takes about a week. Look, it depends upon the patient, and you might be fortunate and go in there on the first day and then bang, everything just works and it's all well and good. But for me, it wasn't quite that simple, and the collection process each time took about a week. So yeah, and that was horrible, because they put stuff in both of your arms and you can't really move, and you're stuck in a chair all day. And if you need to go to the toilet, well, then that's an issue. So I had to go to the toilet, and you can't move, and nurses have to come in with a bottle and stand there, and look, it's just a terrible experience. Just didn't like it at all. So as I said, viewers, I've now, it's been a year to the day since I've been diagnosed, and for me, the road ahead seems to be hopeful. On the day that I was admitted to hospital on the 16th of December 2020, a key cancer number in my case is called paraprotein, and my paraprotein was 82, so it was quite high. And 50% of my bone marrow was actually plasma cells, and it's only supposed to be between 10 and 20%. In terms of paraproteins, a healthy person, a normal person, has zero, and I had a number of 82, which is quite high. Anyway, the chemotherapy drove that down from 82 to 5, which was very, very good. So I responded really well to chemotherapy, and the chemotherapy basically dissolved all of the tumours on my spine and in my body, in my bones. It dissolved it all, which was pretty good. So speaking to my haematologist, Professor Stephen Ting, who's a really great guy. Malaysian actually, was Malaysian born, but he's lived here a long time. He's got an Australian accent. Said that, look, we've come as far as we can with chemotherapy, driving my paraproteins down from 82 to 5. To get it down further, we needed a bone marrow transplant. So I had a bone marrow transplant, and so going into the transplant, the first transplant, my paraproteins were 5. Then after the transplant, they dropped down to 3, then 2, and then 1 with no treatment at all. So I went into my second transplant with paraproteins of 1, which is really, really good. And I'm yet to receive information regarding my current paraproteins, but I'm hopeful that it's driven down to 0. Worst case scenario, it'll stay at 1, but I'm hoping it gets down to 0. And the doctors and hospitals don't tend to really worry about your paraproteins until they hit at least 5. So basically, whether I have 0 or 1, or 2 or 3, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the stability of the number, and 0 isn't actually 0. 0 is it actually means undetectable. So I might have paraproteins between 0 and 1 that can't be detected. I might have, well, not between 0 and 1, but I might have 0.5, for example, or 0.25, and that's not detectable. So 0 doesn't actually mean 0, it just means undetectable. So what's important now is that whatever my paraprotein number is, it stays that. It stays like that for as long as possible. Hopefully many years is the target that we're aiming for. Basically, the medical treatment, the process that I've gone through, the procedure that I've gone through, is all about putting the myeloma to sleep. That's the best medical science can do at the moment. Can't cure it, but the best they can do is actually put it to sleep. And I was told by my GP, Dr. Morton Rawlin, that if I had have come to him 15 years ago, he would have said, look, sorry, Rick, but there's not much we can do, and you need to just get your stuff in order and basically prepare to die. So the advancement in medical science in the last 10 years, 15 years has been absolutely incredible, and I'm hoping that the rapid increase in medical science and knowledge in this space is exponential, and that it increases so much, so quickly, so that when my myeloma does in fact decide to wake up, hopefully I can go to the doctor and I'll say, okay, no problem, Rick, take this pill, all sorted. That's what I'm hoping for. Effectively, what I've got is a time bomb inside me, and this time bomb can detonate at any time. So it's not known. It can be 1 month, 3 months, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Nobody knows. So that's why the focus going forward is on the stability of my paraproteins, not so much the actual value that's there. And I know from experience that even at paraproteins at 5, it does not impede my functioning and my lifestyle in any way, shape or form. So I do know that from experience. So, paraproteins of 5 doesn't mean that you're stuck in a bed somewhere, because it's not the case at all. You're completely active and you can do whatever you like. Paraproteins of 82, different story. When my paraproteins were that high, basically my body was anemic, so my muscles could not get enough oxygen, and I found what should have been relatively simple cycling, because I've done these paths so many times, should have been relatively easily and straightforward. Now I found it to be incredibly fatiguing and extremely difficult, and I thought it was just old age, but it wasn't. It was cancer. It was myeloma. It was blood cancer. causing this issue. So anyway, that's all behind me now. So I'm waiting for my PIC line to be removed. Hopefully this coming Monday. In about 3 months, I will begin on the maintenance drug, lenalidomide, which is a derivative of thalidomide, as in the famous thalidomide and the thalidomide babies. And I'll be on that for the rest of my life, basically. So I have had that drug before in the past. Lenalidomide is actually part of standard treatment. I can't recall actually what the side effects might have been from that, so I'm going to have to relearn that going forward. But I'm hoping it doesn't have too much of an impact. And I'm hoping that my peripheral neuropathy eventually gets better, and that the nerve cells regenerate, and I don't have to deal with this issue, because it's extremely difficult, and I can't be on my feet for more than a few minutes at a time. I'm certainly really limited to about 30 minutes of walking as a maximum. So that's actually quite a significant change in my lifestyle. It does not impact, though, my cycling, so I can happily cycle, and I don't feel any distress from the neuropathy whatsoever, which is good. I'm very pleased about that. But certainly walking, it's an issue, and I am very concerned about getting back into the workforce, because I've got these issues, and I'll need time off for cancer treatment. I've got regular myeloma clinics, forever from now on, because my blood needs to be monitored, and my situation needs to be monitored. And that requires time off, and I've got the neuropathy issue, and it's a bit of a stressful situation for me going forward. But I certainly am very fortunate and have had all the support from family that I could ever want or need, which has been fantastic, incredible. My mother's just been beyond incredible. So look, I mean, what I will say, something that was said to me, I'll repeat it, and that is, when someone gets cancer, the entire family gets cancer, and that's absolutely true. So at the moment, I have been double vaccinated against COVID. However, the transplants have just wiped that away, and according to ATAGI, now I'm officially classified as unvaccinated, so I'll have to get all my vaccinations for COVID again, and that's really important, because COVID's out there in the community, and the mortality rate for blood cancer patients specifically is extremely high if COVID is contracted. So that's a really significant concern that I have. And I'm deeply worried about it, and I do try and avoid all people at all times. But anyway, it is what it is, and I'll just have to try and manage that going forward. I was also going to mention some other things, but it's just it's escaped me at the moment. So anyway, viewers, that's basically it. I just wanted to mention all of that. And as I say, it's been a year since I've been diagnosed with blood cancer, multiple myeloma, and I will do another video session in the future. Yeah. Anyway, this is where I am. 1 year on. Yeah, so looking forward, hopefully, to a long life. But again, you just never know. All right, viewers, I'll sign off for now, and I'll speak to you again at some point in the future. Cheers.